How do you do? My name is Professor Percival Pretorius Poultergeist, and I am here at the behest of the Institute of... And it is my belief that it would be a little unkind to show you the following feature without a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the tale of the Invisible Man, a man of science who sought to remove himself from the visible spectrum without reckoning the fragility of the human mind. It is one of the strangest tales ever told, as it deals with the mysteries of the psyche. Are we who we truly believe we are, or do we merely act in response to consequence? I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So, for those of you who do not wish to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to... well, we did warn you.
Good day, my lovely motion picture broadcasty fellows. You should now be hearing my voice transmitted through the magic of radio waves. If you have followed your instructions complicitly, you should soon be able to see moving pictures that will help you to visualize the points of discussion in today's broadcast. The picture should be coming into view now. Let us dive into the astounding cinematic marvel that is 1933's The Invisible Man. May I first bring your attention to the promotional material for this motion picture, as I believe we must clarify some points that may mislead the unfamiliar. Though it is true that this picture is based upon the fascinating science fiction novels of the one and only H.G. Wells, and holds on to many of its key elements, you may be shocked to know that the plot we will soon discuss is actually a merger of The Invisible Man and the novel The Murderer Invisible, written by Philip Wiley only 2 years prior to the film's release. Many of the tale's darker elements can be traced back to Wiley rather than Wells, which is likely proof of the more desensitized constitution of the modern audience. So, on to the feature in question. Brought to you by the people of Universal Pictures, our tale begins on a blizzard-wrought winter's eve in the quiet town of Iping, as a stranger clad in a long coat and bandages heads towards the Lion's Head, a local public house filled with humor and merriment.
You hear about Mrs. Mason's little Willie? Sent him to school and found him buried 10 foot deep in a snowdrift.
How did they get him out?
Brought the fire engine round, put the hose pipe in, pumped it backwards, and sucked him out.
Childhood trauma. What a lark. The man wasn't playing at all. It was in fact a player piano. Oh, Mr. Sheriff, you will have to go easy on me, or my funny bone may pop out and start a life of its own. Anyway, moving on. Our mysterious man arrives at the inn to a deafening silence. The locals recoil from the man as he demands lodgings. Here we are introduced to the landlord and lady, and with but a word...
Hello?
The landlady has begun to rub me up the wrong way. What an absurdly grating octave you do speak in, madam. Anyway, I digress. The man's requests for lodgings are met with great opposition, which seems strange. I'm sure that any self-respecting business owner would welcome some extra income during the winter months. Eventually, the man is taken to his room, where his standoffish nature is met with a look that leads me to believe that the landlady has just had something crawl up her backside. After taking his supper, the man demands to
be left alone and undisturbed.
However, a pot of mislaid mustard causes the man to be impertinently interrupted, almost blowing his cover. We are now taken to what may be the largest room in a house I have ever laid eyes upon. This is the home of local scientist Dr. Cranley and his daughter Flora. The latter is most disturbed at the apparent absconding of Cranley's lab assistant, Jack Griffin, who has been missing for nearly a month. Dr. Cranley dismisses these worries under the pretense that Jack had left to finish an experiment. Here we are also introduced to Dr. Kemp, another lab assistant and rival of Griffin's. I am sorry, but look how absurdly large this room is. It would be no wonder if Jack had merely gotten himself lost behind the ficus for almost a month. Honestly, you could call out at full volume and people would think you the wind. And what possible purpose does this door serve? We have already seen that this is one room by the aforementioned ficus, which now, presumably, you wish me to believe is housed within a wall. Moving on. Here we learn about Jack's erratic behavior prior to leaving, and the fact that he seemingly burned all of his notes, along with the mundanity of his employ.
Your father's a scientist, Flora. He's discovered more about preserving food than any man living, and Jack and I were employed to help him. That's a plain, straightforward job. It's not romantic, but it saves hundreds of deaths and thousands of stomach aches.
I'd have lost my mind years ago. Back at the tavern, the stranger confounds about finding a way back, before he is interrupted by his lunch call. Slamming the door in the landlady's face causes her to produce a sound that could summon a demon from the lowest rings of hell. Distraught, the landlady demands her husband remove him from the premise, eventually threatening,
"If you don't kick him out, I'm clearing out myself, and that's the truth. And I mean it this time."
though if I were the landlord, I'd be paying the stranger for some most desirable peace and quiet. Still enraged, the stranger takes out his frustration now on the landlord, hurling him down the stairs. This, unfortunately, leads to more of this.
He's a raving lunatic.
Go and get the policeman.
Please don't cry now. He's all right. Please don't.
And eventually, the introjection of the police, though the bobby that they find seems slower than a milkman stuck in a snowstorm, providing us with such zingers as...
Beck me? You know who you're talking to?
This intrusion seems to be the last straw for the stranger, as he becomes more wild and belligerent than ever. Now, here is where I take issue. Surgical bandages and a long coat, I fully understand. Even the wig and goggles I can tolerate. I mean, in this day and age, who am I to shame someone who may be a balding motorcycle enthusiast with a complex about his waning hairline? But am I to be led to believe that as a man, now invisible, that he was able to purchase a prosthetic nose? I am unsure of the commonality of establishments that sell prosthetic appendages in Iping, West Sussex, though I cannot think of one such establishment in my immediate vicinity that even a corporeal man would be able to peruse latex conchs, snozzes, or snot lockers. Though I understand that that may now be besides the point. Here is where we get our first glimpse into the horrifying truth of our stranger.
Look, he's all eaten away.
Huh? How do you like that?
Terrified, the townspeople flee, until the bobby makes an astute realization.
He's invisible, that's what's the matter with him. If he gets the rest of them clothes off, we'll never catch him in 1,000 years. Come on.
Put the handcuffs on.
How can I handcuff a blooming shirt?
Around the wrists, dear fellow. Though I'm sure it's not the first time his shirt will have seen irons. After giving the townsfolk the runaround, the stranger offers a quick explanation before barging out of the room.
It's easy, really, if you're clever. A few chemicals mixed together, that's all. And flesh and blood and bone just fade away. A little of this injected under the skin of the arm every day for a month. An invisible man can rule the world. Nobody will see him come. Nobody will see him go. He can hear every secret. He can rob and rape and kill.
Hey, look out!
The invisible man is now free to rampage through town, destroying property and people alike. This is our first glimpse into his descent into madness. This is also our first glimpse into the real majesty of this film. Utilizing cutting-edge filming techniques, objects fly about on screen, seemingly possessed by himself. In years to come, people will look back and think, blimey, how on earth did they manage that back then? Back at the lab, Kemp and Cranley hunt for clues as to Griffin's whereabouts, finding naught but a note regarding a dangerous drug with the ability to sap colour. Cranley explains that he heard of an experiment on a live animal that not only turned the animal stark white, but sent it raving mad. The two fear that Jack may have used this in an experiment upon himself, and relent to tell the police of his disappearance. As Kemp leaves the lab, it would appear he has stumbled into Narnia. Alone in his home, Kemp hears a disturbing radio broadcast about a mass hallucination of an invisible man. His fear increases tenfold as the radio seemingly turns itself off. Here we find out that Jack Griffin and the invisible man are one and the same. After several threats and conversations, Griffin seeks to enlist the help of Kemp. Under duress, Kemp relents to assist Griffin, at least for long enough until he can get help. Griffin chooses to relay his ghastly plans for his new abilities.
We'll begin with a reign of terror. A few murders here and there. Murders of great men, murders of little men, just to show we make no distinction. We might even wreck a train or two. Just these fingers round a signalman's throat. That's all.
Coincidentally describing my typical weekend away. Kemp is then forced to drive Griffin back to Iping so that he may collect his research notes, though the tavern is now being utilized for an inquiry into the strange goings-on. Kemp, looking like a scared dog without his master, waits unknowing that Jack's ego will cause him to take the life of the chief of police and hurl an unfortunately plastic cup at a landlady. Honestly, all the glasses around and the one that hits her is plastic? I'm beginning to doubt the intellect of Jack Griffin. Back at Kemp's residence, a surprisingly calm Griffin relays some of the follies he's discovered with his newfound powers.
There are one or two things you must understand, Kemp. I must always remain in hiding for an hour after meals. The food is visible inside me until it is digested. I can only work on fine, clear days. If I work in the rain, the water can be seen on my head and shoulders. In a fog, you can see me, like a bubble. In smoky cities, the soot settles on me until you can see a dark outline. You must always be near at hand to wipe off my feet. Even dirt between my fingernails would give me away. It is difficult at first to walk downstairs. We are so accustomed to watching our feet. But these are trivial difficulties. We shall find ways of defeating everything.
After which, Griffin settles down for the night. Kemp, on the other hand, is now more restless than ever, and despite the threat to his life, decides to call Cranley and the police. This is quite honestly one of the smartest things I have ever seen a fellow do in one of these horrific tales. Too often do characters act as if all is well, until indeed it is too late. Believing himself saved, he heads to bed, but without his knowledge, Cranley and Flora arrive, alerting Griffin to Kemp's betrayal. Though after seeing his love, Griffin is forgiving. That is until he spots the police in the garden. Looking to escape, Griffin makes a promise to Kemp to kill him the following night at 10 p.m. Flummoxing the police, the invisible man makes his escape, and doing so with great jovial pride, like a child making away with his mother's stock of biscuits.
Here we go gathering nuts in May, nuts in May, nuts in May. Here we go gathering nuts in May on a cold and frosty morning. Whoops!
Now, Griffin will set about on a second wave of terror, though this time, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. First, some of the men from the search parties, then destroying a locomotive, and even robbing a bank. Distraught, the police try to come up with a plan to stop him, deciding to use Kemp as bait. Understandably upset, Kemp only relents to help the police if they assist him to escape into the countryside. Now, armed with dirt on the prison walls and paint guns, the police set about to catch the invisible man, though Griffin has other ideas. Disguised as a police officer, Kemp heads for home before making his getaway into the safety of the countryside. Kemp's celebrations are short-lived, however, as a voice emanates from the back seat of the car.
I think this will do nicely, Kemp. We'll stop here. It's 10 o'clock. I came with you to keep my promise.
appear that he could not escape his fate. Tired and cold, Griffin seeks shelter in a nearby barn and promptly drifts off to sleep. His snoring is soon discovered by a farmer, who, eager for the £1,000 reward, skips off to the station, probably excited at the prospect of being able to afford a decent trip to the barber's. Honestly, man, do you want a beard or not? Pick one. Even if you are a Quaker, you can at least cover your chin. The police now hurry to the barn to smoke him out. Before long, Griffin emerges into the fresh snow, where his now visible footprints make him a clear target. Lungs punctured by a bullet, Griffin says his goodbyes to his love, Flora. As death takes him, we see him once and for all return to normal.
And so concludes today's broadcast. Upon reflection, what would you do if you were given the powers of the Invisible Man? Would you cause mass chaos, or would you do good and become a hero of the people? I, for one, would spend my days tripping people over in public, causing them to question their ability to be a functioning human being. So, as always, please remember to fill out the recommendation surveys sent to you by post, as this will allow us to know if you enjoyed today's broadcast. Also, do remember to share the referral tabs with your friends and family. If you have yet to fill out your subscription form, then do so, as you risk missing out on future broadcasts. When filling out this form, do remember to check the bell icon, and we will send you a telegraphed notification when the new issues are released. I have been your host, Professor Percival, Pretorius, Poultergeist. And as always, we give thanks to the Institute of... which is the reason we are all here. Brings us all together. Rest easy, my friends. We are watching. Good day.